it. Okay, great. I'll go pretty quickly. Hi, everyone. My name is Eliana. I live in St. Louis, Missouri. I am in my second year of the fellowship, and originally I'm from Chapel Hill, North Carolina. I also grew up in Chapel Hill, went to school at UNC Chapel Hill, and I think in my year we were the top school to send folks to BFA, but I actually didn't learn about the fellowship until my senior year of college. I was thinking in the business school, studying policy. I had worked at Cisco Technologies, a big technology company, marketing for a summer in Research Triangle Park, and thought I was going to do that with consulting. And then very quickly realized that once I heard about Venture for America, it really met a lot of the needs that I was looking for in those different experiences, but also provided me with a lot more and definitely aligned with my passion for being and meeting new people in a new city who are just as excited to be there as I was. So the community factor was really important for me. But then also, I thought I might want to start a company one day. So I wanted to be around people who'd be willing to de-risk that opportunity in some ways. So I was looking at, and I'm sure we'll talk about it in a little bit, a couple of different opportunities, and match ended up at the one I never even thought I was going to end up, which is Boeing Kreisnick Ventures. I'm actually in my boss's office right now. I wouldn't recommend doing it, but he's in the UK. So I've been here for about 2 years. There's a couple of other fellows who have worked here previously. And yep, happy to talk about all the things company-wise, city-wise, or VC, any of the things.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Hannah, I'll kick it off to you, okay?
Okay, perfect. Hi, everyone. My name's Hannah Feiner. I am based in Philadelphia, and I'm originally from New Jersey, so not too far away. I went to university at Susquehanna University in central Pennsylvania, and I had a self-design major, so it combined creative writing, communications, and business, called writing and marketing communications, and major in Spanish. But I also took some entrepreneurship and innovation classes, wound up minoring in that, and found out about Venture for America. I actually worked for a year after college before I started BFA, and have since been at my company in Philly, like Eliana, for 2 years. And it's a health tech startup called Patient Wing, and we make it easier for patients to find and enroll in clinical trials. And I focus on business development. So yeah, also happy to answer any and all questions you have.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Hannah. And Hannah, last but not least.
Unmute. Hello. Can everyone hear me? Cool. Hey, I'm Hannah. I am based in Birmingham, Alabama, and I'm from Kansas City, Missouri. I studied mechanical engineering at Missouri S&T and graduated in 2016. So I'm actually have graduated the fellowship. I've been in Birmingham for 2.5 years, running a makerspace, creative co-working space, and really working with a bunch of small scale, like production companies, everything from ceramicists to woodworkers to, I've recently started screen printing myself. So very much on the creative side of working, but a lot of heavy operational things that go on for my day-to-day.
No, awesome. Thank you, you three. And just to give you all a brief preview of what we're really going to talk about today, I'm going to, again, just kind of introduce what is Venture for America, who we are, what our mission is, and then we're going to transition to a panel followed by Q&A from you all. So again, should you have any questions, feel free to include them in the chat box in Zoom. Thank you. All right, so Venture for America. So what is a VFA? I hope that if you all have advanced to the essay stage by now, you all will know, hopefully, our mission. However, if not, just a friendly reminder, Venture for America is a nonprofit organization that aims to really create economic opportunity in different cities within the United States through really building the capacity of different individuals interested in the startup community and entrepreneurship, and really equipping them with the skills needed to create different sorts of jobs. And so hopefully through our fellowship program, we aim for one out of two outcomes, and that is to either really build the capacity of leaders so that they become leaders in the startup community, or eventually support different kinds of individuals to create their own organizations and companies. And so with that kind of in mind, that's a little bit about our mission and who we are. And so transitioning forward, a lot of the cities that we operate in and focus on are often on different cities that have supportive startup ecosystems. However, they are different cities that need really that talent, because a lot of the talent and funding, approximately 80% of venture funding to be specific, oftentimes goes to different cities that are already known within the technology, STEM, and startup scenes, such as New York City or San Francisco, and so on and so forth. And so we tend to focus on different cities like Birmingham, Cincinnati, Detroit, New Orleans, and Pittsburgh that already have that supportive ecosystem for startups, but again, purely need that talent in order to really get things moving. And so we often partner with these different organizations to do that. So all of that in mind, just to go over our application process again. So the first stage that you all got through is submitting it, of course. So I think that's an accomplishment, just because, hey, like, I sometimes forget to do the most basic things. So submitting your application and just basically telling us a few activities that you've been previously involved with. And then the stage that you're currently at is the online essay stage. So when it comes to the online essay, kind of writing to us, describing why you'd like to become a BFA fellow, and really in written form, pitching yourself for a startup job and discussing a BFA city that you're really interested in. And then should you proceed in the video interview, a video interview is the next stage, which you all can think of as more of a conversation between the interviewer and yourself. And they get to really learn more about your interest in BFA and your previous experiences, as well as the different motivations you have for joining the fellowship program here at BFA. And then the final stage is selection day, which you all can think of as a grand opportunity to really meet a lot of the BFA community. And when selection day occurs, we often invite finalists to one of our 14 cities that we work in, or New York City, because that's where one of our main offices is based. And so within selection day, as much as you're meeting people, you're also undergoing a series of different group activities to really test out your collaboration skills, as well as one final individual interview. Again, just to talk about more of your experiences and your goals if you were to gain a spot in our fellowship program. And so again, the stage that you all should be at is the online essay stage. And so again, like, if you all have any questions, like, feel free to put them in the chat box. But moving on from there, just to kind of tell and explain more about our fellowship program at a glance. So let's say that you earn a position earn a spot in our fellowship program. And so after you earn a spot, you'll gradually begin to get onboarded to a lot of different resources that BFA offers, and you'll begin to meet the team, different incoming fellows, and then eventually from April until whenever you gain a job opportunity, you go through what we call match, which you all can think of as a job search, wherein you're really gaining an opportunity at a startup organization to complete your 2-year fellowship. And within match, you are consistently going and researching different company partners, interviewing and pitching yourself, going potentially even to different cities of the opportunity that you're really settling on, and really, again, securing that job opportunity in order to complete your fellowship. And then afterward, in July, then you go to training camp, which you can really think of as a formal program to learn those hard and soft skills that are really needed to succeed in a startup environment, like managing up. What is it like to really organize your work? And what is it really like to transition from that early career and recent graduation space to the startup environment, since it can often be very fast-paced and dynamic. And so it's basically a huge orientation, not only to the startup world, but also your incoming fellow class, where you get to really build a huge community. And then afterwards, then you conduct your 2-year fellowship at the startup organization that you secured a job at in Match. And so this could mean being a project manager at a startup organization focused on healthcare in Baltimore. This could mean really being a software engineer at another organization focused on engineering in Pittsburgh, and so on and so forth. And so during your fellowship, you're in your city and you're really with your cohort kind of experiencing this 2-year journey. And then post-fellowship, a good amount of our fellows often stay within the startup community. Some eventually even start their own side projects or even go to different sorts of organizations. And others also go to graduate school and other larger organizations equipped with the skills that they need to really start up different sorts of projects and be leaders within the community. So all of that being said, just some application tips to really consider, especially regarding the essay portion particularly. It's going to be really important to demonstrate that mission and programmatic alignment. So just as much as we're really hosting this fellowship program to really build the capacity of individuals, at the same time, how does your interest in VFA really align with the mission that we're ultimately trying to achieve, which at the end of the day is economic opportunity through startups? And so all of that kind of in mind, again, just kind of think about and be intentional about the reasons you're doing it and how it connects to our mission. And so aside from that, what we're also looking for is the ability to contribute and make an impact. So because you're often at times in a startup, we are looking for individuals who have demonstrated that they can really make an impact and can really accomplish different sorts of activities. So let's say that, for example, you were a social media coordinator or a marketing manager at a student organization. In particular, like what was your impact and how was it measurable? Were you able to drive up user engagement, or were you able to spread awareness of your organization to different individuals? And so I would really encourage individuals, as they're really describing their experiences, to be as specific as possible, especially when talking about your demonstrated impact. And then third of all is character. So of course, just as much as we really look for individuals who are connected to our mission and can make an impact within different organizations, at the same time, how are you when it comes to constructive criticism? How are you when it comes to having a growth mindset and really using different feedback to adapt and grow as a person? And do you possess different skills that we would like to see in different leaders, whether it be that ability to collaborate and work in a team, or again, like really take feedback and grow. So all of that kind of being said, now that we've briefly taken care of our organization, BFA, and our mission, and some things to really look out for when it comes to the application process, we're now going to move on to our panel. So in terms of our panel, I have some prepared questions, and so I'm going to stop sharing my screen and kick it off in a minute. So all of that being said, okay, so for Hannah, Eliana, and Hannah, I think the first question that I have for you all is more so focused on a day in the life as it relates to the theme of the webinar. So with that kind of being said, what is a day like at your job within BFA? And again, like for those like who don't have their mic muted, please do mute it just so we can hear clearly. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, you got it.
You go first.
Oh man. Okay. So a day in the life here at Make Birmingham is one of those, you talked about startups being fast-paced, being able to adapt really quickly. I am the only full-time employee of this whole company. And so I don't really know what I'm doing when I come into work every day. I know like there might need to be a kiln loaded. There might need to be a couple things on my to-do list, but I've had to learn so much to be very like self-starter in the fact of like, here's what needs to be done. Here's how to prioritize it. I've worked with so many small businesses. I really, like I say, half my job is just small business consulting because I go around, check in on all the members, see where they are, ask them questions, learn a bunch from them, and then be able to talk to other people on that. And then just like, there's a lot of admin stuff, a lot of keeping calendars straight, a lot of talking, like the customer service side of things. We do classes for the public. And so like currently my day-to-day is full of people asking how they can get into a ceramics class and just figuring out how to get them all into some ceramics classes.
Love that. I can go next. Am I muted or unmuted? Let me see. Oh, okay. I can go next. I just keep having to check if I'm muted or unmuted. So yeah, I don't think I mentioned it fully. So I work at Boeing's venture capital arm. So first comment when people ask me about the fellowship, they're like, "Is that a startup?" And I'm like, "Well, if you considered it the most well-funded startup that's existed in a long time, perhaps." Because it is only 3 years old. When you think about Boeing, it's like a 100,000 person organization. I'm on a team of, now it's grown. So I've been here. When I started, I was like, I guess only junior employee. There's about 9 of us on the investing team. And then we kind of sit in the innovation arm. We work in a startup co-working space in downtown St. Louis. So it's like removed from the broader Boeing unit. And so my typical day, funny enough, you might imagine Boeing, it's been an interesting year for me. So I actually started at the company when you could think everything was kind of turning upside down. And it's been really interesting when you think about you're going into a group. Basically, the takeaway at the end of this is like, no matter what you're looking at or what job, like things change, things move around really quickly. And especially like it's, a lot of what I've learned is like adaptability and really just like going with it. So from like a day-to-day roles perspective, my job is similar to like, because we're only 3 years old and Boeing's never had a venture capital arm before. At first it was like, how do we do this? How do we set this up? So we just launched our first accelerator in the UK, and my job has been to figure out like, how do we work with a supplier management organization that's used to working with suppliers and not startups, and they want to give them net 90 payment terms, and startups will go under in 90 days if they don't have money in time. And so that's been my headache this week. But it can be anything like that to we're figuring out like a CEO summit, and I'm event planning for that, to reviewing startup pitch decks. And my thought was, how do I better understand if I want to start a company, then looking at what makes a company fundable. So I'm reviewing anywhere from like 80 to 100 pitch decks a month, because a lot of people are coming in and reaching out and looking for investment from Boeing. So it's a strategic investment firm. So it's and no, I don't have any background in aerospace or defense. So it's looking at how can technologies from the outside benefit back into Boeing. So I'm spending most of my day trying to find the right person inside of a company to help evaluate for a startup, to help that startup grow. And then outside of that, my typical day might also include I'm working on a sunscreen product for men with my mother that we launched. We actually competed in, there's a a couple of different opportunities in BFA where you can pitch your ideas. So I did that at our like summer reunion, and we came in second place. But it's been something I've been working on for the last year. My mom's a dermatologist. I also don't have a background in healthcare, but that, you know, I can be spending 1 or 2 hours with her, kind of thinking through different problems we're tackling, maybe a formula redesign, maybe FDA compliance. Again, an industry I'm learning a lot about. So, or just like I live with 5 other fellows in St. Louis, so maybe cleaning up my house for like 2 hours, or the dogs that are staying with us. So day in life can look very different depending on what's going on.
No, awesome, Eliana. That sounds, that very much sounds like a dynamic experience. And Hannah, what about you?
Yeah, so I, just to repeat again, I'm based in Philadelphia. I work for a health tech startup called Patient Wing, and we have a platform that connects patients, research sites, and pharmaceutical companies or sponsors, and makes communication a lot easier between all of them, and also help actively recruit patients. And so when I started here, I guess I'll also reiterate that adaptability is definitely a huge thing, probably in any single fellow's position, no matter what it is. I started really focused on business development with 5 full-time employees, some part-time, but there was a point where it was just me and my boss, just 2 full-time in the office for various situations. Our CTO and head of product are married and they had a baby, and then they left, and blah, 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 whatever, it happens. And so they're super part-time now. And so my role expanded a lot into kind of taking over a lot of projects, learning Google Ads, all sorts of different things, a lot of client relationship management. And then we've since hired, 2 fellows last year, 2 more, another person recently, so back to 5 full-time and still some part-timers. So day in the life can be extremely different day to day. I might be at conferences or networking events, or I might be doing a lot of follow-ups, or I might be managing a particular project or jumping in here or there, because all of our projects can look very different for every client. So yeah, it fluctuates a lot for sure.
No, absolutely. And I really like that all 3 of you kind of described the dynamicism of the fellowship experience, and that you're not just necessarily really working on one particular thing, but you're really getting to touch on a lot of different buckets. So I think that's really valuable. And I think just moving on more so to a match question, since I've been getting a lot of questions regarding that. How did you find your job through BFA using Match? And Eliana, this time we can start with you.
Sure. So as I mentioned, I was looking in the fall at jobs, and so it was like, oh my gosh, am I going to have to go through this process all over again? Which, yes, like you do, but it's also one of the things. So I had a good combo between, you have the opportunity to reach out to companies, and also companies can reach out to you. So I think I was one of the crazy people. I was location agnostic. I was like, as long as it's not freezing cold 100 days of the year, like I can do it. I was pretty role indifferent. I was like, I just want to be with people who are really, really passionate about what they're doing, where I feel like I can learn a lot and the city is going to support me. And other than that, I'm pretty open to whatever it's going to be. I have a business background, so like maybe that will relate into it. So I tried, and I thought I was actually going to be working at an early stage startup. So I reached out to, there's probably like 20 companies in total that I ended up talking with, which is a lot. Some people like do 3 or 5. And the last 3 that I ultimately whittled it down to based off of, was this right fit for me, for them, was an early stage startup in Baltimore that's focused on IoT. Another really early stage, I would be like the second person employee in Miami, looking at like AI for auto dealerships. Their headquarters in Israel, all of that. And then the company that I'm at, Horizon X Ventures, I'd actually spoken with a fellow who works at Horizon X Ventures previously as part of the interview. She still works here, but it was part of the interview process. And I spoke to all 3 companies, well, two of the companies had a lot of fellows that had worked there in the past. And I thought that was just a really cool way to be able to join a company, was to have someone who could almost be like an early mentor in some ways. And then what ended up being a really big mark for me, I made an Excel spreadsheet like the nerd that I am, and was writing, is it going to be based off of the founder's experience? Will it be based off all these different things? And the on-site is what made the biggest impact. For me, at least, when at each stage, it was like, who could I feel the most comfortable, like myself with, that I'm going to be coming here every day? Where do I think there's so many opportunities in Match that are really cool, but you find out like a lot of people do switch what they're doing throughout the fellowship. And like, I've had friends that have switched to different startups. And that's fine. Like the team at BFA is super supportive. And it was more so like, where can I at least start off where I feel like the people around me are going to be supporting me no matter, how new I am to the role. And they're going to also, you're just going to be given a ton of autonomy if you're in a startup or any of the fellowship companies, because that's the expectation kind of when you come in, that you're going to take charge. So I don't know if that was helpful.
No, I think that is, because I think you're really talking about the perspective of like, what are the expectations of really a startup organization at times when you are working in a small team. So I actually really like that you mentioned that. So thank you. Hannah, what about you? What's your perspective on your Match experience?
Yeah, so I think going into Match, something that Team BFA had told us was, like the two most important things, and this really resonated with me. I agree that should be your like role, what you're doing or can be your role, what you're doing day to day, and then also your team, company culture. Who are the people you're working with? Like those are the two things that overall impact your day to day the most. What you're doing routinely, as well as who the people are around you, and then kind of like pick a third thing. Is it the city? Is it the size of the company? Is it the industry? Is it the funding? There's so many factors. Is it the experience level of founders? And I personally wanted to be in Philly because my family is nearby. So I was focusing my search a little bit more there. Also, like Eliana spoke to it, a ton of companies. I think it was about 20 overall. So I was open, like if other cities reached out, I still took that call. Like even if I thought I wanted to be in Philly, I would still look at other opportunities. But I was really lucky because I kind of had all these ideals. Like ideally, I wanted to be in health tech or ed tech or something related to sustainability. Ideally, I wanted to be a small, like around 5 to 10 person company, although it wound up smaller at some points. Ideally, I wanted the founder to, it's definitely a great experience either way, if they have less experience or more. But I felt like I'd personally had enough experiences of learning from failures where I kind of wanted to see a founder who had a lot of success in whatever industry it was. And so with my founder happened to have been in this industry for a while. He successfully started up a company. So all in all that to say, like, I kind of wound up founding my company because and the mission resonated by far with me the most of any company I spoke with. Like, it's just really a matter of finding the right fit for you, figuring out what it is that you want, what, size, like, what do you want, like, the leadership team to look like? What is the culture like? It's all a matter of finding the right fit. Oh, I think you might be muted.
No, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, there we go. No, absolutely. And I really like that because Hannah, like you are absolutely right. Like in a way, it is really up to like what sorts of things you're really preferencing. And so as much as like you have intentions, like also definitely be open-minded. I think for those who are listening, like one of the things and main questions I get all the time from different individuals like yourself are like, when considering these cities, like what do I need to really take into consideration? And honestly, like there really is no right or wrong answer. I've heard people really consider a lot of cities because their families nearby. And that's perfectly okay, because that is absolutely a consideration. I've heard different individuals really consider cities like Pittsburgh because it's often a hub for the robotics scene, which a lot of individuals are into. And so again, I think it is primarily, like Hannah said, up to really your preference, as long as you're really intentional about it. And Hannah, what about you?
All right. So my match story is actually kind of funny. I sent out two like match requests to people and was like inundated with lots of tech, like software engineer type requests to me, which I had no experience in, like very minimal coding background. And so I was like very worried about all those, but still was talking to these people in the project management world just to see what it was. And then I ended up coming down to Birmingham for the job fair, and which we haven't really touched on too much. But after you go through or while you're going through match, some of the cities hold job fairs, and it's a chance to meet with a bunch of the different companies in that city, get to talk with quite a few of them. Like I think I talked to 11 companies that day, and it was a long day. But during lunchtime, after lunch, I had a slot with one of the companies that I sent my request to. And before lunch, one of my friends had an interview with them, and he came back by and he's like, "Oh man, they're taking me to this space. They're going to show me where they do this." It was like a woodworking company. I'm like, "That's so cool. You should take me with you." And it was just like a joke. And then he's like, "Oh, I'll go check. I'll go see." And I didn't want to interrupt his interview. I didn't want to like impede on that, but I was so excited. And he came back. He's like, "Bruce is cool with it. Let's go." And so we just skipped out on lunch, went to the makerspace where the woodworking studio was working out of, and walked around, saw the whole space, talked about the company that we were there to see, and then ended up being late to my interview with that company because Bruce was showing me around. And so he is also the founder of one of the spaces, or one of the companies that use the space, as well as the whole space in general. And so we talked a lot on that company. But then later that day, he emailed me and said, "Hey, got this thing. It aligns much more with what we talked about with you, what you're looking for, but it's super abstract." And I was like, "Cool, that sounds fun. Let's talk tomorrow." And so my first official job interview was actually brainstorming what this job would be and what would take place with it, because they knew they wanted someone. They had talked about putting something on Match, but they really couldn't identify what that was going to be yet. And I think that's an important thing to think about, is when companies are putting up their Match stuff, when you're going through this Match process, it's a couple months ahead of time when you would come start. And when you're working at these really small startups where day to day you may not know what you're doing, it's really hard to look 3 months down the line. And so finding that fit where you fit with the company, you like what they're doing, and you're ready to morph into a role that may be similar to what you're signing on for initially, but definitely could change, is really part of that keeping an open mind. Because with a startup, it's volatile. It could change in a matter of days what your new job description would be.
Re-upping the comment on the job fairs. I thought about that when we were talking about Philly. Regardless of if you find a company from it, like I did end up interviewing with this one, like you also find out companies that maybe you shouldn't keep going down the line with, that maybe you would have otherwise. So upping that one.
No, absolutely. Thank you. And just for all of you folks listening in, job fairs are, of course, like Hannah was saying, are different opportunities and events to really meet clusters of startups and company partners that BFA often works with, in order to really meet them and really interview with them informationally for different sorts of positions within our BFA cities. And so they happen regionally, and they typically occur around April during match season. So just for more information. I I'm going to take two audience questions. And I actually really like this next question because I think it does get to a lot of information that different individuals often want to know. But from an individual in the chat room, Ronnie, can you talk about financial considerations as you were considering VFA and what that really looked like? And so just to kind of, I think, I can definitely let our panelists share some of the things they were considering, and then I can, of course, share more information on my side. But let's start with Hannah this time. What were some financial considerations you were considering, as comfortable as you feel sharing? Because I know finances can be like a sensitive topic sometimes, but y'all, student loans are real, so I get this question deeply. All right, go ahead, Hannah.
Absolutely. So I come from the day and age where I know BFA has changed their wording around the hiring. But when I was signing on, they had a minimum and they're like, okay, like you're going to go work in any of these cities and they have to pay you at least $38,000. And we saw good things and bad things out of that. Like, I'm pretty sure I would not have been able to get that high of a salary with the funding, with the way my company works, had that not been there. But I also know people that were totally undercut with it. So I'm very happy to see that VFA has changed their position on that. I think now it's much more at the market. They're trying really hard to not undersell anyone. But sometimes you do come in with a little bit of I don't want to say intern mentality, but they're like, oh, let's offer them a little less. And so just being able to work around that, being able to provide about your skills, talk about what you're doing, knowing that you could have gone and gotten 65 easily right out of school, just being able to realize here's what you're going to learn for a little bit more and get a hustle and learn to pick up something else too. But it's been okay here. We survived the 38,000.
No, absolutely, Hannah. And just to definitely like share some information before moving on to Eliana and Hannah. So in terms of like the bare like minimum, it's of course like Hannah was saying that 38,000 figure plus health insurance or, oh, can you all hear me now? Sorry. Okay, perfect. Sorry. Or that 38,000 figure, or and in addition, health insurance or that health insurance stipend, so you can purchase on the open market. In addition to other different kinds of benefits that that company partner might offer, like equity, a stake in the company, among others. And so, however, like there are different company partners within cities that also pay differently, depending on the job market, what kind of role you want to pursue. And so just looking at past years' data, a lot of our fellows were anchored around a median of 45K to 46, with other different kinds of roles like software engineers earning more. So it definitely does depend on a lot of different factors. Like in particular, like again, that role, your city, however, that's just some information for y'all to go off of. Eliana, do you want to take the next step? What were some financial considerations?
Yeah, sure. So I can say, not that I'm trying to motivate anyone on St. Louis, but it's apparently like one of the most affordable VFA cities, also like cities in the US. So there were a couple of different things, and I think a lot of it is like how your mentality is going into the fellowship to start with. Like, you're not taking this fellowship because you're like, I want to earn the most, right? When I'm starting out from graduation, there are other ways and like other definite reasons why you take jobs for that reason. And you will find like what I love about the fellowship. There's so many different people, like so many different reasons that we were talking about before for why people take this and why they stay closer to home, or maybe why they go further apart. Like I was like, the only place I didn't choose was, I was like, I can't do Charlotte. Like I can't do Charlotte because it's North Carolina and I'm doing this because I said I wasn't going to be in North Carolina. So I think that there's a lot of different ways that VFA finds ways to like support you if like that's if you have different, you know, like financial considerations going into the fellowship. For example, like for the job fairs, they will cover, I think, up your flight,
Yeah, up to $300. Yeah.
Up to $300. But then there's other things like I don't know if I should say this, but like I have stupidly cheap rent, and I do live for the past 2 years in like a house with, at one point it was like six fellows, 3 guys, 4 guys, 1 other girl, myself. Now I live in another house, and it was like $400 a month. And that includes, like, let's put it out there, I'm in the up and coming, like, cool neighborhood. I'm a mile away from my office. I park on the street for free. Like, you have to be smart about where you're living and what you're doing. But like, there's so many ways to make a city work. We do things like we'll do group dinners. People host stuff, and it really is like affordable and livable. I think you just have to everyone has different factors that they're weighing based off of like pay, city, proximity. And so yeah, those are just a couple of the things. Also, if there are other like follow-up questions, can take those offline.
No, absolutely. And Hannah, what about you?
So kind of going off of what Eliana said in regards to like specific, you know, I guess just thinking about like your costs as well is helpful. Like, your a $40,000, even if we're talking about the bare minimum, $38,000 salary in Philadelphia, or any of these cities is so different from a $38,000 salary in New York or California, and that's a huge financial consideration. The fact that you can live extremely comfortably off of even that minimum, which we are definitely beyond that minimum at this point in terms of the average among fellows. And it's also a factor I know VFA has stats about like a few years in, we're on par with Ivy League grads who just entered whatever aspect of the workforce, or even higher, because we are kind of in a lot of ways investing in these smaller companies. Even if you do stay at your startup, you're helping to grow that startup. They see the value that you're providing, and sometimes you are compensated a lot better as the next year and the next year. So that's definitely something to take into account. And like, for example, even in Philly and Miami are like 2 of the more probably expensive cities, but I pay $1,200 a month for a 2-bedroom, so $600 a month. I'm also a mile from work. Like, yeah, it's incredible. Like, even our most expensive cities, like, you can find what works for you.
No, I love that. Thank you, Hannah. And again, like, I think that just goes to show, like, if you were to become like an incoming fellow, it is going to be important to really kind of decide on those preferences. And again, like, what works for you at the end of the day? And like, what are those financial considerations? Just because I think acknowledging reality, like, you might have to budget more than others. And so I think it's just going to be important to take those things into consideration. But in terms of the next question, and one that I really liked for you 3, Hannah, Anna, and Eliana, what is something that you wish you knew prior to joining the VFA Fellowship Program? And what is something that you would have liked to know when you were an incoming fellow as well? So take a second to meander over that. I know that can be a little bit of a, well, I mean, you know, it's definitely something to contemplate on, but again, no pressure.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Eliana.
I'm like, I'll give it a whirl. I don't think this really answers the question, but it's some form of an answer. I think we talk a lot about like, and my boss is calling me, so I might have to get off in just a moment. But I'll answer this really quickly, and then I might have to run. People who apply for this fellowship, a lot of people are pretty type A in the sense of like heart, very driven, usually like, want to be the first to act, want to get information as quickly as possible. And I think that, I'm getting another call. Do you mind, I'll send it. There we go. Sorry, it keeps coming up. He's probably wondering about the UK accelerator. That it's okay to like, you're gonna get in. I wish I had everyone tells you this and then you still don't do it, but like, give yourself the 6 months. Like, I wish I told myself to like, give myself the 6 months to be a new employee. Like, you are in this interesting space, but like the number one thing is like you're learning all the time, and your learning curve is like this when you're starting out. And I think there's this feeling of like, you got to be with your new city and you have to get into your new job. And like, I think that I wish I knew how things would level out. And that it's also okay. Like, you can live alone. It's not like gonna kill you. Not to say, like, I love living with my other, but like, I have friends who live alone. I like live with a lot of people. I have once to switch jobs. And so I think the flexibility piece, and as much as like you apply that in your job, like applying it to other parts of my life, I think I wish I would have done a little bit more, because I think I'm like, I need to get involved in my city like today. It's like, you don't know your city sometimes if you're not from there, and it just takes some time to like meet people who do, and then you can pick like one thing and stick with it for like a period of time, and you'll learn, and like you don't have to stay with it forever, but just give it time. I don't know if that answers the question, but
No,
how I think about it.
No, I think that does though, Eliana, because I think it speaks to the importance of like letting yourself process the transition, like from like that stage you were previously at, whether that like is a previous job or university, to like the fellowship and like getting to know your new environment. So I actually really like that.
Okay, I'm gonna have to hop up for 1 second, but
totally go ahead.
Yeah, I think.
Okay.
All right, Hannah, go ahead.
I was just gonna kind of emphasize that. I think knowing that it's okay to take your time and process everything, and before totally jumping into a side hustle or this or whatever, is definitely important. And kind of, this isn't exactly answering the question, but I think something that can be helpful for, obviously, myself, the other fellows here are happy to answer any other questions that can't. Fellows, you'll be able to kind of have a better expectation of like, you not even have to ask that question in a couple of months down the road. What's what you would have liked to know? You can get a really good sense from talking to fellows of what it's going to be like. Because when I was in my interview process, I spoke to a bunch of fellows and was able to, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. You hear it on your end too? No. Whatever. Okay. But anyway, you can get a good sense of like what the experience is like, and have not, honestly, I mean, obviously you'll have a lot of changes with your specific startup and your scenarios, but kind of an expectation of what the overall experience will be like.
No, thank you for sharing. And Hannah, what about you?
Yeah, I think one thing that I saw the most throughout the fellowship and like the 2 years as opposed to going in, and I've seen some people asking questions about it too, is like, you're not stuck in this job. If it turns out that it's not the right fit, if it turns out this isn't what you wanted to do, it's not like they're like, okay, bye, have fun, like you're on your own. I've seen so much support from the BFA staff and community when fellows are looking to transition. And I know going into it, you think, oh man, I'm gonna go work at this company in the city for 2 years, but things happen, things change. Like most of your college, like you'll get a year out of college and you'll see everyone's starting to move around on their first jobs too. So it's like totally normal. And I think going into it, I thought I was like, oh, I'm making this decision and this is where I'm gonna be forever, and like, what if I get stuck in Birmingham at this place for all of eternity? And just like not looking at it like that, looking at like, this is a good experience for me now. If it needs to change, it can change, and like, you're not set in stone. And the community and the job boards are so helpful during your fellowship, especially if you want to move to a different VFA city. And they're like, they can connect you, get you talking to the people that you need to talk to, and find what's right for you.
No, beautifully said. And no, and I know that we're running low on time, so potentially penultimate question, but what has been the most rewarding part of the fellowship, and what has been the most challenging part for you two?
Oh man, I think
and again, like, you can take a second to think about it, because I know, again, like, it is again, it's a dynamic experience.
Yeah, I think I can go ahead. So I was not prepared to come in and not really have a boss. Like, the owner is here sometimes, we chat with him sometimes, but like, my first year, my joke was like, I saw my boss once a month, and that was cool. I had a ton of autonomy. I learned really fast, but it was also kind of terrifying, and I had to learn how to keep myself accountable. And I hit that point where I'm like, okay, this is cool. This is fun. I understand what I'm doing. And then my one coworker transitioned out of his role. And so now I'm currently in another big shift, and it's daunting. It's like, this whole project that's something really cool and something that someone else has put a lot of money into is all riding on if I can make it work, which is kind of wild. And so I'm very excited to try that and like make it work. But I'm also in that, like, this is terrifying. This is like, we can make it or break it in this next year.
No, and I think that's absolutely fair, Hannah, just because, like, I've known individuals who can, like, really thrive, like, with a lot of autonomy, but I also understand that for a lot of other individuals, like, it can be like a bigger learning curve for some more than others, especially for those who might need like that presence of their supervisor at the beginning. So I think that's completely
Absolutely.
fair. I think that's really fair. Hannah, what about you?
Yeah, so in terms of the most rewarding part of the fellowship, I think that has probably been overall just the community. And I think a lot of fellows would say that as well, that I mean, it's really just an amazing thing to be able to move to a new city and have this built-in friend network. But not just that, there's fellows all across the country who are from all these other classes who are willing to support you and vouch for you, and you can reach out with any and all questions. It's really an amazing community. So that's probably been the most rewarding part of my fellowship. And as far as the most challenging, also, it's constantly kind of just balancing a lot of different roles. I think, you get used to it and you're doing it. And, even if that's something you have been used to, like my last company was just me and my boss. Also, it's the whole time, not just for some period like now, but just taking on a lot of different new roles, stepping into new areas, and kind of balancing it with what actually, like, just everything is something that needs to be done, but being able to let some things go. Like, okay, if we're not able to get back to everyone in a timely manner at all, like, that's okay, because we physically cannot. That's okay. That has to happen. So kind of, constantly reprioritizing, and being in a new industry. So like learning a ton about that. But yeah, the biggest challenge probably being constant prioritization.
No, absolutely. And I, of course, want to respect everyone's time. So in these last 2 minutes, Hannah and Hannah, what is one quick tip that you would offer to all of the applicants, especially at this stage of the process? Without revealing too much.
I think one quick tip is to just honestly do your research, like see if this is the right thing for you. And if it really resonates with you, share that, share how much it resonates with you. That's probably my biggest tip.
Mm-hmm. I think my biggest tip is to like go through with it. I almost didn't apply, and so I was the first person from my school to show up or to find Venture for America, I suppose. And I was like, this thing is made up. Like, I don't know what this is. I don't know anyone who's done it. Started to do my essays, got super distracted, ended up finishing them at like my roommate's graduation party while they're all having fun. I was like in the laundry room finishing it up. And because I was just like, like, we'll see what it goes. But it really has been so rewarding. So I found great friends. I found a great job that like literally verbatim was what I wanted to create when I was going into like, oh, if I was going to be an entrepreneur, it'd be this. And so just like take the time, go through with it. If it's not for you, you'll find that out and make that decision then. Don't let it just be a like, oh, well, it just seems like it's a process.
No, definitely, definitely. No, thank you so much, you two. And we've perfectly hit 5:30. So again, thank you all for really showing up and attending. And again, I'm going to send a recording out. However, everyone in the chat, because I realize that would be chaotic, but please send much love to Hannah, Hannah, and Eliana for sharing their stories and perspectives. And much love to you all for attending and showing up today and learning a little bit more about BFA. If you haven't already signed in, again, feel free to go to tinyurl.com/lowercase BFA123. But aside from that, you can also contact me at joel@ventureforamerica.org, and I am willing to answer any and all questions. I mean it. I am a real person, not AI, but aside from that, thank you all again for your time. It was great to see you all on this webinar. And thank you, Hannah, Hannah, and Eliana for, again, sharing your perspective and stories. Very much appreciated. And have a good night, everyone. See you all, and hope to reconnect later.
Bye, guys. Good luck.
Bye. Good luck, everyone.